in those sets, I feel like I'm there and I'm in that time.
You know, you're just transported to that world.
Watching Stranger Things is a thrilling yet bizarre experience with superpowers, demogorgons, upside-down worlds. But what do some of these iconic scenes in Stranger Things look like before the special CGI effects were added? Well, in this video, we're going to take a sneak peek behind the scenes of Stranger Things and take a look at some of their most well-kept secrets. Make sure you stay to the end because you'll be shocked by what happens. But first, a simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We will be giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or a MacBook Pro. It's all your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. First, the props are actually old. One of the things that makes Stranger Things a really interesting show is the ability to conjure up nostalgia, especially for 80s babies. It's impressive how these scenes inside the grocery store actually feature snacks, candies, and memorabilia that have long been gone from the market shelves. A lot of people thought these props, along with the old boomboxes and bikes, were digitally retouched, but that's actually not the case. Veteran prop master Linda Rice has to scour eBay, flea markets, and prop rentals to get the most amazing vintage stuff for the show. It cost production $220,000 to get everything they needed. Stuff like Jonathan's Pentax SLR, the Panasonic boombox in Will's room, the Memorex cassette, the yellow wall phone, and chocolate pudding in cans are just some of the most interesting vintage props that we get to see in the show. Next up is that the scenes with the demo dogs were actually done using jelly props. Remember the demo puppies that totally captured Dustin's trusting heart before they turned out to be Demogorgon dogs? Well, there's no way those were real, right? So does it mean the cast members simply stared into an empty space whenever they're looking at, or talking, or carrying the terrifyingly cute creature? Of course not. They had to put placeholders at least so the actors would have their eye line in the right direction. Apparently, the show creators used two different sets of placeholder props for this. The first set were jelly action figures, which were basically models of the actual demo dogs we saw on screen, only made of inedible jelly. Now, when the demo puppies grew up to become full-sized dogs, the small jelly toys proved to be too small to create a believable eyeline. So they had to create plastic heads to be stuck onto sticks. That's right, a staff member had to manually operate the plastic heads to keep the illusion. Next is the drip. If you think there's no challenge in creating Eleven's recurring nosebleed, then you are gravely mistaken. It's not like you can store small vials of fake blood up Millie Bobby Brown's nose. Even a small pack of plastic filled with the red liquid cannot fit up there. Not to mention it could be a health hazard for the young actress. So most of the time the production staff had to drop a precise amount of fake blood up Millie's nose that she really had to keep her head tilted back until it was time for a nosebleed. This is such a rigorous practice, but it's actually hilarious to imagine Millie on the set with fake blood up her nose trying to dribble it so it wouldn't fall before they could shoot the scene. The precision required for this entire process is just too much that when things are tight, they actually have no choice but to do it all via CGI. Did you notice that some of those nose strips were actually computer generated? The main monster in Season 1 is an actual guy. Remember the predatory Demogorgon in Season 1? That creature was too horrible to be nothing but a figment of the imagination, made true by some epic visual effects, right? Well, apparently the show creators wanted very little computer manipulation on the first season, that they had an actual, live person play the role before they embellished him with CGI. So yes, an actual person had to wear a Demogorgon costume covered with bits of green cloth to make post-production editing easy. If you want to give props to the person behind that awesome villain, you can look up performer Mark Steger, the guy who put on the creature's suit, waved his hands a lot, and thank him for giving us such a legendary pilot season. Next is the Void is basically just a giant hockey rink. 3 seasons in and we still don't know very much about the Upside Down. Well, at least we now know that most of it, like the Void, is just a really big rink. I mean, who would have thought that it would actually be so complicated to mimic a vast expanse of nothingness with nothing but soul-deep water in it? If you've ever wondered if the cast really had to get wet for these scenes, the answer is yes. Show creators built a mini hockey rink and filled it with just enough water to reflect in full whoever steps on it. Even the darkness is not CGI. The entire hockey rink had to be surrounded by black theater drapes. But of course, they had to adjust the lighting in contrast in post-production, so that the final result will not look like Millie's just standing in an empty theater stage. The Mind Flayer, which gave us nightmares for months, was actually a very silly man. The big bad wolf of Stranger Things Season 2 made the Demogorgon look like a joke. Well, that might be an exaggeration, but all I'm saying is that there's very few things in life scarier than a shadow monster that has psychic powers which can control not just people, but other monsters too. If you want to get over your fear of the Mind Flayer though, I urge you to find footage of the original scene before the video effects were added in. I swear, you can just picture this scene in your head whenever terrifying thoughts of the Mind Flayer start to take over. Even the production staff cannot help but lose their marbles over this guy wearing a red suit and a metal helmet as a placeholder for the Mind Flayer. It's pretty hard to hold on to the horrifying fantasy once you see this silly guy knocking over stuff and slithering on the floor, just like the Mind Flayer. Next is that the vintage walkie-talkies actually worked. Sometimes. It's actually not that hard to come by walkie-talkies that still work to this day. However, for this show, they needed walkie-talkies from the 80s, or at least some that look like ones used in the 80s. As mentioned earlier, the show's prop master was awesome enough to score walkie-talkies that were perfect for the show. However, the challenge was trying to get them to work. Most of the walkie-talkie conversations in the show were made using sound effects and manipulation. But here's a little trivia. Sometimes the walkie-talkies would actually work, but of course they were too unpredictable to rely on for all the scenes. But it was cool to think that those vintage phones would sometimes spook the young members of the cast by emitting low monotone sounds and radio scratches. Joe Keery was actually kicked out of the kids' group chat. Here's a behind-the-scenes secret that's both fascinating and heartbreaking. Apparently all the kids in Stranger Things have a group chat where they update each other, tell jokes, and exchange juicy details about their personal lives. Apparently, Joe Keery used to be a part of the Cool Kids group chat back when they were shooting season 1, but he was promptly kicked out of it once others found that he was way older than the rest of the kids. To compare, Joe is now 28 years old while Millie is just 16. Sadly, the older members of the cast don't have their own clique. Next is the fact that there's a guy whose job is to blow dandelion seeds all around the Upside Down. One thing that makes the Upside Down absolutely magical is the fact that there's always spores flying all around. Here's a little secret though. These things are not added through CGI. You see, they had to create the perfect scenario where the seeds will be floating everywhere, but also reacting appropriately to the movements of whoever is in the scene. This is much more complicated to do this digitally. So when you come and visit the set of Stranger Things, don't be surprised to see a man standing there blowing seeds the same way kids blow bubbles. How funny is that? Did you know that Noah Schnapp is an expert at making faces? In an interview, Noah was asked to recall some of the hardest acting pieces he's had to do in Stranger Things. In season 2, he had to go up against the Mind Flayer all alone. This meant a lot of working alone against green screens. Remember how he was strangled by the enemy monster at one point? Yeah, Noah was just making faces the whole time. Pretty convincing, right? He had to do this all over again when he was possessed, and every time Will Byers had a seizure in the show, and because of all these scenes, Noah had become sort of a master at making faces. Next is that Joe Keery has a contractual obligation to keep his locks pristine. Here's another secret. Did you know that Joe literally cannot mess with his hair? When he signed a contract to do Stranger Things, the show's producers found his hairdo perfect for the 80s set show. So they inserted a provision in his contract that he cannot in any way change up his hairstyle or he could risk losing the role or getting significant pay cuts. If you think this is a bit too much, then just try to imagine Stranger Things without Joe's shiny, curly, angelic mane. It's impossible, right? Next moment is that Eleven's hair in flashback scenes were CGI. Some people think it's unfair that Joe Keery cannot style his own hair when they allowed Millie Bobby Brown to just CGI her way into bald flashbacks in season 2. So we all know the dramatic story of MBB having to get her head shaved for season 1. It was a big moment for the young actress, who said she's gotten accustomed to hiding behind her full hair whenever she's feeling self-conscious. Still, Millie said having a semi-bald head did make her feel powerful. However, she begged and begged the staff not to make her go through that ordeal again, just for some flashback scenes in season 2. First, they tried the good old bald wrap and short wig combo, but Millie's short, curly hair proved too difficult to keep under a bald cap, so they had to go with CGI, while saying they can't do the same for Keery. Lastly, here's how that flipping van scene looked before they put in the CGI. Here's everything you need to know about this iconic scene. Every part of it was authentic, except the part where the van flipped over a bunch of innocent, awestruck kids. So the production staff had to use actual explosives to make the huge van flip over in the air. So when it was time to shoot the scene with the kids, they simply had to imagine that a van was flipping right above them. This takes tremendous talent and proves once again that the cast of Stranger Things are some of the best TV performers that we've ever seen. So there you have it, some of the most top secret and impressive behind the scenes moments of Stranger Things. Season 4 is hopefully coming out at the end of 2020 or start of 2021, and it's a show that has a lot of fans impatiently waiting. What do you think about Stranger Things? And will you be watching Season 4? Thanks for watching the video.